Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I have said on this site on a number of other occasions that MDC Triple C sold out. They sold out by failing to implement even one token reform which would have stopped Zanu PF rigging the elections. They've also sold out by participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, and that participating would only give Zanu PF legitimacy. Lied about plugging the vote rigging loopholes to call people to participate in the flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. I have said, and I will say it again, that Chamisa and this Triple C have become Zanu PF Team B, playing for two purposes. The first one is to make sure that Team A wins. And the second one is to make sure that Team A gets political legitimacy, no matter what. Here is one case where Triple C, Chamisa and company behavior showed that they are indeed Team B. Here is a clip of the 2018 Constitutional Court appeal by Chamisa challenging the results of that year's election. You just listen to it once more.
Zimbabwe have now held their recent elections, which went well.
International monitors had to force their way through angry crowds to deliver their verdict. They reported serious flaws in the process. It was not a level playing field. Many injured and 3 dead. The opposition says the shootings and the beatings cannot be justified. And an election in which Zimbabwe dared to dream has instead brought back its worst nightmares. There were running battles through the city centre and the streets echoed to the sound of gunfire.
Zimbabwe have now held their recent elections, which went well.
You are ready now to start. I am ready. You may start.
Thank you, my lord. What ZEC has done is to violate the constitution, to violate the Electoral Act in a manner which has ultimately benefited the first respondent. National and Central, page 159, the report by the ZBC, it does 2 things. Number 1, it mentions figures. Number 2, it attributes those figures to a ZEC official. It says by 5:30 p.m., 105,000 people had voted in National and Central. The final figure that one gets from ZEC is that an hour and 30 minutes later, plus 370,000 people voted. Is it humanly possible? But it doesn't end there. Then there is the issue of identical polling results. There are at least 16 polling stations with identical results. Identical results for Chamisa, identical results for Mnangagwa, identical spoiled votes. And in all those places, Mnangagwa not only wins, but wins big. It's like a kid was playing with the figures.
I'd like to stop there. I would like to re-emphasize that point. there were 16 polling stations in which 2 or more polling stations had identical results. Identical number of votes cast, identical number of votes cast for each of the candidates, and more significantly, in all those 16, Mnangagwa was leading comfortably. I think the more rational explanation for it is that when these figures would have been submitted in the form of the famous V11 forms, when these figures were being added up, those who were responsible for adding them up were told to re-enter those figures to top up Mnangagwa's total. That is the more rational explanation. In other words, in all those cases where you had 2 or more polling stations with identical figures, the only logical explanation was that the second polling station does not exist. In other words, if one was to ask for the sealed ballot boxes from those second or third polling station, they would have been found that they did not exist. That was just somebody who had entered that V11 total twice. Now let's listen very carefully to what happens next.
That, with respect, is not how an election is conducted.
We'll now give the opportunity to Mr. Kanengoni.
The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission cannot be taken to task to say, why is the voter turnout in my central at this particular level and not at that particular level? Voters behave the way they do. No one knows why. Maybe behavioral scientists may be able to answer the question if they study it.
Mr. Kanengoni, there's the averment that several polling stations showed identical results.
And the simple point we make is that there's no need to be theoretical about it. We have the returns. This is something that happened. We show you the returns. And we've put the returns for 2 of those polling stations here to illustrate the point.
You say it happened?
Yes.
But in his presentation, Pofo says it's actually 16 polling stations where the identical results. You heard it?
Yes, we did. Even in the affidavit, they put a bit more of the polling stations there. But we chose this to illustrate to the court. But for the rest, it did happen. It did actually occur.
We'll now go back to the applicant. Why go for speculative conclusions of manipulation?
The point that I wish to make is that this is evidence of manipulation by ZEC after the process. Now, if you go to what they call the primary data, you're going to see manipulated data. So the applicant cannot ask a court to open residue which has already been manipulated.
That does not make any sense at all. The rational explanation was in these 16 polling stations, somebody was entering it twice. So the primary data that he's saying has been manipulated is which data? The residue, as he calls it. You're drinking from a poisoned well. The Chief Justice was absolutely right. Why go for speculative? Why are we trying to double guess here that the entries were entered twice? If these polling stations existed, let's go back to the polling station and open the ballot box to see these identical figures from those polling stations. It is not ZEC official or the Supreme Court or the Constitutional Court in this case. We said, no, let's not open the ballot boxes. It is Chamisa's lawyer who refused to open the ballot boxes. Why would you do that? Why would you be the one insisting that you don't want to open it? I don't want to drink from a poisoned well. Who is asking you to drink? Would opening or asking to demand that we open those sealed ballot boxes, would they have undermined Chamisa's case or proven it? Of course, it would have proven it. So why are you the one refusing that you don't want your case proven beyond all reasonable doubt? I repeat, Chamisa and his friends are Team B. They've been playing to make sure that Team A wins, and then it gets legitimacy. If you look at what is happening in Zimbabwe, you will see this happen again and again and again. This recent election, 2023, SADC, the AU, all condemned this election process as flawed. Because they are flawed. So you have got to ask yourself, so what did Chamisa mean by saying he had plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes? Of course he was lying. And by saying it, this is becoming a serious threat to those who do not want the truth to be said. And part of that group who do not want to hear the truth is the Chamisa Chete brigade, as I call them. Chamisa Chete supporters. They are so passionate about Chamisa. They believe he's a demigod. I have said it, and I'll say it again, that this is the kind of naivety that doesn't help the country at all. But some of them have become so enraged that people like myself, we have dared to criticize Chamisa, have come under attack. We should not make the mistake of thinking some of these Chamisa Chete fanatics are nothing more than kapenta fish. They really have become piranha, the red-bellied piranha. in a feeding frenzy, they will strip a bull elephant to the bare bones in an hour. That's how dangerous some of these people have become, to not only themselves, but to the nation. The interesting thing about these people, this Chamisa Chete brigade, as I call them, is that when you ask them, did Chamisa lie about this plugging the vote rigging loopholes? On the one breath, they don't want to admit that Chamisa lied. And yet, if you ask them, were the elections rigged, they will agree that the elections were rigged. You can't have it both ways. If Chamisa said they had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes, then the elections were not rigged. And yet, we all know that the elections were rigged, blatantly rigged. But this is the kind of people we are dealing with here. They will not want to accept reality. They will not want to accept the truth. I have played this video from the BBC reporter talking to this very point of Chamisa lying.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza nawo akomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza nawo akomana.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election, $15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
One of the things that has happened here, why some people do not want Chamisa discredited, is the Triple C leadership themselves. There is no doubt that the likes of Tendai Biti, for instance, appreciated that there was a problem with participating in flawed elections. This is a quotation that, from what Tendai Biti said, repeating the same ideas that we're talking about here, that we should not be participating in flawed elections. But when he realized that there were no takers, he decided to participate. And people like him have now an invested interest in participating in these flawed elections because they know that they will get the spoils, a share of the spoils of power. And that's all they care about. You criticize and denounce Chamisa, and these people are not amused. The other day, I played a video clip of Margaret Dongo saying, addressing the same point, that these Triple C guys, even when they'd read the SADC report, the AU report condemning last year's elections, they still took up their gravy train seats, claiming that they had paid their own money to participate. These people have got an invested interest. They do not want the debate of let's stop participating in flawed elections advanced, because they want to participate in those flawed elections out of greed. And it doesn't matter what you and me say, they don't want that to happen. The third group, which is not amused to hear that Chamisa and company are being discredited, much less that if this process continues, they may find themselves in a situation where Chamisa is not able to attract enough of his Chamisa Chete brigade to participate in these flawed elections. And therefore then cost them political credibility. That group is Zanu PF itself. Like it or not, most of the denunciation of, or support rather, of participating in flawed elections is not coming just from the Chamisa Chete brigade or our tiger fish Triple C leaders who are determined to participate in these flawed elections, but they are also coming from Zanu PF leaders themselves, who are seriously concerned about Chamisa participating but failing to attract enough of his supporters to participate in their millions, as happened last year. If MDC supporters do not participate in these elections in their millions, Zanu PF will lose political credibility. And that is something that they will not tolerate. In this whole debate, those who are fighting that we should stop participating in flawed elections have got to fight on three fronts. The first one is the Chamisa Chete brigade of the overzealous, brainwashed Chamisa Chete supporters who think Chamisa is a god. How anyone can be so naive is unbelievable. We also have got to fight the Chamisa Triple C leaders who will want to participate in these elections, no matter how flawed the process gets, for their own share of the spoils of power. And the third front is we've got to fight Zanu PF leaders and their apologists who are determined to make sure that Chamisa participates in these flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. Zanu PF leaders are like the crocodile in the Zambezi. if they can feed on one of their own, you can bet they'll feed on those who threaten their hold, their chances of getting political legitimacy. That is the danger that those who are criticizing Chamisa are facing. Of course, Chamisa and company, as Zanu PF Team B, but Mnangagwa doesn't want to hear you say it. And that is the real threat that people must face. Chamisa is important to his not only his Chamisa Chete brigade, but is also important to all the CCC MDC supporters, or leaders rather, who are fighting for a piece of the action, to get a seat on the gravy train. And Chamisa is also important to Mnangagwa himself. As long as Chamisa participates and gives Zanu PF legitimacy, that is what Mnangagwa wants. When push comes to shove, Mnangagwa and his friends did not hesitate to stage a coup that deposed Robert Mugabe, because Mugabe was becoming a threat to their own hold on absolute power. That is the three-front challenge that anyone who is criticizing Chamisa or denouncing Chamisa must face. But we need to face it. After 44 years of rigged elections, Zimbabwe must resolve this problem of rigged elections. We really cannot afford to have 2028 elections, people participate, conned into participating and giving Zanu PF legitimacy. We have to confront Chamisa. We have to confront the Chamisa Chete brigade. We have to confront the CCC leaders who are determined to participate, and therefore then are the ones who are out there saying, no, we can't, we have got to participate. And they will come out strongly and say that, yes, there's a chance that we will win rigged elections. We have got also to confront Mnangagwa, who will be spending millions of dollars, no doubt, in selling the idea that the opposition can win rigged elections. They only have to try harder. That is the challenge. And those are the enemies we've got to deal with. I believe we can prevail, and we must prevail. We have to end this insanity of rigged elections. We have to end this madness of participating in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy and to perpetuate the suffering of millions of ordinary Zimbabweans. Thank you very much. those of you who were able to join me this evening, and we hope to meet again soon. Have a good night.